Hi, guys. Thanks so much for joining us today. I am pleased to be joined by Nichole Lovejoy, who is a Marine Corps spouse and the Chief Mission and Advancement Officer at the New River YMCA. Hi, Nicole. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much for having me.
No, I'm excited, and we had to postpone this because you were coming to DC for the MSOI festivities. Congratulations on your selection
Thank you. Thank
as the
you.
MSOI for New River.
Yes, for New River.
Very cool. So that tells me that you're very engaged and involved in your community because, you don't become MSOI without being very involved. So thank you
Yes.
for everything you do and congrats.
Thank you so much.
So I thought before we got started, if you could just share your military spouse journey, because we got to talk a little bit and you were talking about how you finally got to your dream job. And it was so funny because she said that she was offered a dream job and then 3 days later her husband got an assignment. And I'm like,
Yeah.
of course he did. So
Right.
take us through the journey leading up to that, if you would.
Yes. So we first arrived in Jacksonville, North Carolina in 2014. So we've been here for a really long time. And I had just graduated from college at the time that I relocated here, newly married, away from family. And so I was like trying to find a way to get plugged into my community and just really make this a home, right? And so somebody who was actually a realtor at the time invited me to join him for the Jacksonville Rotary Club.
Mm.
And I had never even really heard of Rotary before, right? And I'm like, I was like 23 years old, brand new to the community. And I was like, but I'll go, right? And the people that I met at that Rotary meeting, they just blew me away. The way that they had grown in their careers and the businesses that they were building, and just like that camaraderie. And, it was a good mix of former military spouses. Everybody was pretty old, but they just really made me feel welcomed. And so that's really how I got started and being connected within the Onslow County community. And 11, 12 years later, I'm still in that same club. We've moved away and came back and was welcomed with open arms in that club again. And so I would really say that's how I started to just make my way through my career and ultimately actually ended up with the job that I have. Some of our board members at the YMCA are actually fellow Rotarians,
Mm.
and they asked me to apply for this job. So it's
So
just full
networking really
circle.
worked for you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It did. It's just, growing those relationships over the course of years and just keeping those relationships even when we moved away is what ultimately led me here.
And getting involved in the community.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's so many different things that we do as Rotarians in the community, but then it also exposed me to different organizations within the community that I was passionate about and I got plugged into through being a Rotarian.
Very cool. So we had a chance to chat about where you guys are in your military life cycle, and your husband is 3 years probably away from retirement unless something happens. Things always happen. But I just want to know, what do you look forward to the most post-military life?
Stability. The
Yeah.
fact that we will actually be able to plan vacations and I won't have to wait until last minute to RSVP for something because I don't know if my husband will be in town.
Right.
So I would definitely say getting our family back together under one roof, since my husband is going to be geobatching, and just that stability that we can plan farther out for things after he's done.
That's so cool because I love that, like we were chatting about how you guys came to the decision to have him geo-batch and to have you stay there. And we always talk about choices because I think a lot of spouses look at people who have like really great careers or a really great job and they're like, oh, they got gifted at that. Like they just happened into it. They got lucky, right place, right time. And then they always forget that it comes with choices.
Mhm.
Like you guys are making we were talking about the choice that you had because he had options, like to go overseas, to come to DC, to go there. And you talked about your decision-making process. And I was kind of trying to sway you to go overseas because I'm like, no, it's a great opportunity and all
You're
that.
not alone. Everybody's trying to, sway us to go overseas. Excuse me. But yeah, I mean, it was a lot of sitting down at the kitchen table and just talking about like what is best for our family long term, not right now. We know that it's not best for our family short term, that we're living apart for 3 years, but we feel that we are close enough that we can take turns going back and forth, and that it's the best thing long term, not only for our kids, for them to have stability with their friends and their church family, and they're thriving in school, but then also for me and my career, it just made the most sense.
And, even in your highlight, but also in our conversation, you emphasize the importance of a support system to you. Um,
Mhm.
we're not really great about asking for help as military spouses. What advice would you have for spouses who might be shy about reaching out for help, especially if they're in your situation where you're looking at facing, 3 years of geo-batching, right? So
Right,
you're gonna and you work full time and you have three
right.
kids. You're gonna need the help. What do you say to people who might be in similar situations but don't want to reach out?
Yeah, so I was that way. I hated asking for help. Um, but I think just over time and building those relationships with people, it kind of allowed me to trust them, right? I mean, I have three kids and I don't really leave my kids with just anybody. And so I felt like once that trust was there with people, then I wasn't so scared to ask them for help. It was like that fear of judgment. But I would definitely say just finding that community. I think for us, we are just so blessed because we've been in the same area for so long that we have our church family. And I have a life group that I run out of my house that I have 12 women that would take my kids any day of the week and love my kids like they were their own. So I think that just having that space and building those relationships, not only at church, but within the community and with my life group girls, it just allows me to feel comfortable that if I reach out to them, they're going to show up for me, and they're going to love my kids and they're going to love me and they're going to rally behind us and just make sure everything's okay. So I would just
So,
say find that community.
So even if people aren't like really active in a church, it really what you're saying is finding a community anywhere in the community, or even
Absolutely.
for military spouses who, you might live in the same neighborhood or
Right.
neighbors, whatever. You're just saying find a community that you
Absolutely.
have to put work into that. Yeah,
Right.
makes so much
Yep.
sense.
Whether it's, your friends that you volunteer with the PTO, or if it's, your neighborhood. A lot of, neighborhoods, I feel like nowadays, at least here in Jacksonville, we have like Facebook groups, right? And
Yeah.
it's just so easy to connect and like find people, or if you have kids, going to like kids programs and things like that, and just finding people in that same season of life that you're in, and just taking advantage of the resources that are available wherever you do happen to be stationed and making the best of it. I think so often before, at least I know early in the career for us, I was like, oh, well, we're only going to be here for 3 years. Why am I going to get plugged into that organization? Or why am I going to go volunteer at the command? But once you are taking advantage of those things and you're finding your place and you're planting roots, then you're going to find your community there.
So if you've convinced somebody out there to get involved, how do they get started? Like if they're shy and they're introverts, they may not know what the first step is.
Right. Um, so I'm not shy and I'm not introverted. But I would probably say just say yes. Go to that first event. You might feel really uncomfortable and you might not know anybody, but I think showing up is that first step. And somebody who is super extroverted, they're going to come alongside of you and they're going to strike up a conversation. And I think, don't give up after just one time either. Show up again, ask that person for coffee, or say, yes, let's go to the park and have a play date in a smaller, more intimate setting. And then I think that community will come with it.
And then maybe pay it forward. Like if you know you've been in that situation and you're at the coffee and the command coffee and you've been there for a while and you see somebody walking in, maybe be the person that walks up and say hello to them. That always
Absolutely.
made a difference for me because like walking into a coffee or an event and being the only person there, that is so intimidating.
Yes, yes, it absolutely can. I always like when I walk into a room, even still how I am, I still look for that one person that I know to kind of like break the ice.
Hey,
And so I think that just is a way to be a little bit more comfortable when you're walking into a new setting. Look and see if you know somebody, scan the room, and try and see if you may know one person in the room, and then use them to help you, introduce to
or
other
even
people.
somebody who makes eye contact with you.
Right.
Like, forget it. If you've made eye contact with me, you're my new best friend.
Yep, yep. If you're like wearing something that I can come over and like say like, oh, I have that in my closet, or oh, hey, I love those shoes, and then like that breaks the ice, right? And it
I
it
know.
makes it feel a little less intimidating.
Absolutely. I love it. So I know that we said that you're in your dream job right now, but you also talked to me about the different zigs and zags that your career path has taken. So do you have any surprises, or were there any surprises about where you are now versus where you thought you'd be when you were starting out?
Yeah, so actually, I'm shocked about where I ended up now, if I'm being perfectly honest. I have a marketing degree. And so I sold advertising in this Onslow County community for about 10 years total, with multiple different companies. And so I obviously built a lot of relationships with people in the community. However, I had never been in any paid role in the nonprofit sector before. So, when they came to me and they were like, "Hey, Nichole, would you consider this?" And I'm like, "Well, not exactly qualified, but I had those relationships built with people." And the YMCA is very much in a growing phase here in Onslow County right now. And so they needed those relationships that I had, with the local community. And so it just kind of fell into my lap, if I'm being honest, but with a lot of hard work over the last 12 years that led me here.
It didn't fall into your lap. It did not fall into your lap. You worked hard to get there,
I
but
did. I
just
did.
humble.
A lot of relationship building, and just being, deeply involved in the community is ultimately what led me here. And obviously, it wouldn't have fallen into my lap had I not built those relationships with the right people who knew that I was fully capable of doing the job at hand. So,
Yeah, it was the right fit at the right time.
absolutely.
So, follow-on question, since we did talk about the zigs and zags and surprises, if you, with the benefit of the hindsight, had an opportunity to tell your 21-year-old self any nugget or any advice for where, where her career was going to go or what she could do, um, what would you tell her?
Take the classes.
Mm,
Look at those free resources that are available to military spouses. Um, get the certification, take the leadership classes, get plugged in, because you never know. All one of those things individually may not seem like it's going to make a difference, but all of those things combined are going to make a huge difference to you, because you may not, like you said earlier, as an advancement officer, I can probably find a job just about anywhere that we go. However, without having those leadership skills or without having those different certifications, I probably wouldn't have been as qualified or as confident to be able to take on the role that I took on. So, utilize those free resources, look at your local community college and see what opportunities they have for military spouses. I know here in Jacksonville, we have free leadership training for military spouses through Camp Lejeune Leadership Seminar. Find your seminar, get plugged in. There's so many resources all across the world, that you can get plugged into that are free or super cheap for military spouses.
no, I love that. And I mean, even the big universities have MOOCs, the ones that are free and online. And
Mhm.
you don't necessarily need like a certification or a degree. You might just need the skill.
Yes.
So I love that, promoting a culture of lifelong learning. That's a great tip. And everybody should listen to that, actually, not even just 21-year-olds, right?
Right.
We're all always learning. Well, thank you so much, Nichole. It's been fun chatting with you. And I know that you're crazy
Mhm.
busy, but I appreciate you taking the time out to talk to us.
Yes, thank you so much. It was such an honor to come and chat with you.
No, this was fun. Thank you so much to our friends at USAA for making these conversations possible. And if you have a great military spouse career story, I hope you'll share it with us because you never know who you will inspire. I hope to see you guys here again next week. Bye, guys.
See ya.